Hey, welcome to the Simulated Kingdom channel. I'm going to be doing a country tier list video. It's World War One performance for all these countries. I'm going to be doing a World War One video to go along with this one. Shoot, didn't mean to click on that. Anyway, how do I click? I'm not gonna get caught up on that. I've already filmed this video way too many times and failed. So let's get on with this World War One tier list. Starting with these tribes. They did fine. Actually, let me number these. This should be like five, 6, 7. Sorry for the loud space bar. This is 8, 9, 10. No country will get, I think, a B. I think some countries get B last time I did it. Anyway, yeah. These, all three of these were Arab rebellions that were able to beat the Ottoman Empire, and being able to beat like a big vast empire, and even if like the British couldn't do it and they were able to do it, it's a pretty big feat, and they did what they needed to do very well. They were very helpful to the Allies, and they just defeated the Ottomans, which was just a big part of the war because the British actually failed doing that. Then the British were able to get these three, and anyway, I mean, get these three to help out, defeat the Ottomans. Anyway, let's go on to one of the just bad, stupid countries, Austria-Hungary. Austria-Hungary, just like it, it's like somebody with broken legs, and the stilts are just the German Empire and Bulgaria, because it just couldn't do any of its fronts. It had a stalemate against small Serbia. It was losing against Russia, and it had like a partial stalemate. It did win some battles in the front against Italy, but otherwise it was just they needed help to do literally anything. I mean, like they did start winning and they were a huge help, but it just they were just big losers. I put them in front of these guys because they were more impactful. So if you're wondering why, that's why. I've done this too many times to not to go by fast. Anyway, um, Belgium, I'm actually going to put it below these guys because these guys actually were just a huge help and actually won their fronts. Belgium, like immediately lost. It did hold some resistance, but the German Empire just steamrolled over them, and they were able to go into France. That was a huge part of the war. Even though they called Britain to the war, they lost. They opened up the German invasion of France, which was just huge for them to go around the front line. So for that reason, I'm gonna put them in low D. Next is I'm just gonna put all the supporting nations together into one thing. Uh, where is Portugal? Anyway, I picked China for the best supporting nation. And by supporting, I mean like it just supported the Allies. It didn't really wasn't like an active fighter for a lot of it. It's just kind of a support. It was a good support because it had so much manpower and it was able to share that manpower with the Allies. It was a huge help. The Japanese were able to win the Pacific Front, which was also a huge help. Portugal was a supporter from the start. Brazil was a supporter for kind of like the end of the war, and so was Siam. I just put Siam just lower because I imagine Brazil would have more help than like a kind of like a puny Asian country of like Siam. Brazil having a vast empire to work with. Anyway, I'm going to actually not Brazil, Bulgaria. They both start with B's. For Bulgaria, I put it in a C just because it was able to win the southern front for the Central Powers. It was a stalemate because of Austria-Hungary's complete lack of competence, but the Bulgarians were able to defeat Serbia, defeat Montenegro, clear up the southern front. It was just, they really helped out, and it was just a core part of the Central Powers winning the early war was Bulgaria just steamrolling through the southern front and winning it for the Central Powers. Next, France. I put France higher than Bulgaria. You may say like it lost, like it was losing the war, but it had a bigger impact on the war. France was just a big part of the Allies. I feel like there were like two core Allied members that actually were good because I'm looking at Russia. It just didn't do good. Anyway, that actually, let me just do it now. Blow Austria-Hungary. It was losing lots of its fronts. Won the Ottoman front. Didn't win, but it did go deep into the Ottoman front, and it was able to kind of hold the Austria-Hungarian front until it didn't, and the whole entire country collapsed, and it just completely lost. So, yeah, I'm gonna do a lot of rethinking this. Anyway, France, it was able to hold the Western Front, which was kind of big because Imperial Germany was the strongest European power. It didn't need help from Britain, but anyways, it was able to hold the front. It was able to entrench the Germans, and it was able to hold that till America could come and just wipe out the Germans. For that reason, actually, America is a foreign country. And I said, nah, I'm gonna disregard that supporting nations are kind of in D and put them in C above Bulgaria because, in a short summary, America, they helped the naval front, they helped beat back the U-boats by the Imperial Germans. This is Imperial Germany's flag, if you didn't know. There are a lot of flags that you may not know. I hope I kind of explained them. Well, you should know this flag by now. Anyway, the U.S., yeah, they were able to help the naval front, and also they were able to win the Allies the Western Front and were a huge part in capitulating Germany. So for that reason, actually getting the Germans to surrender, they didn't actually capitulate them. So for that reason, I put the U.S. Um, between actually like in mid C. German Empire, easy 7. It was it held against Britain like navally, which had like never been done before, except when like maybe the HRV had a big navy. Like maybe the Roman Empire had like could rival Britain, but it just Britain had the biggest navy, had a very strong navy. Being able to hold up against the biggest naval power of the world navally is a huge feat. Also, they were winning all their fronts. They were able to beat the Russians. They were able to beat the French. Well, they did beat the Russians, but they got entrenched by the French. So, yeah, so anyway, they did very good. They belong in the highest spot in C. And just to make things kind of move along faster, I'm just going to put these two in their corresponding things. I'm going to put, actually, Serbia's ahead of Belgium because Serbia was actually able to hold a stalemate longer. But they did completely lose their countries when the Bulgarians joined. Montenegro, its small country, wasn't that much of a help, and it got completely steamrolled, did like absolutely nothing. Anyway, for kind of the failures of Serbia and Montenegro, we roll into Greece, which was able to help the Allies win back the southern front of World War One. Basically, Greece was basically just a landing port for like French, British, and Allied support to just come rolling through and defeat Bulgaria and liberate Serbia and Montenegro. So, anyway, they were just they were huge helps to the Allies because they actually had a foothold in southern Europe, a front that they had been just completely lost for a long time. but it wasn't like a surefire, like you win the whole entire southern front. But Bulgaria was like yeah, the Central Powers are winning the southern front. Greece is more like the Allies could win the southern front. So anyway, we're almost at the end of this tier list. So Italy's below Russia. At least Russia had some victories on some fronts. Italy held the front, but just lost. Anyway, I need to kind of reconfigure this. Italy was able to hold the front. It was able to keep its country, but it just the only front that it had, it was like losing against the Austro-Hungarians. It was losing the only front it had against a world power that's kind of incompetent. Actually, World War I was filled with a lot of incompetent powers. As you can see, if all these were actually, some of these are based on how much they participated. So you can't say that everyone below C is basically incompetent, but there were a lot of weak members of both the Allied powers and the Central powers. Anyway, moving on. Yeah, Italy lost to the Ottoman Empire. I'm gonna put it above Bulgaria because it was a bigger help. It was able to hold up against Britain and France navally for a bit, but I do imagine that did lose a lot. It was able to hold back the British front. I mean, not the British front, their like southern front with the British until they got completely steamrolled by these three Arab tribes. But they held it for like an amount of time. It didn't last long though. Like they did beat the British back a bit, but then the British just completely capitulated the country. It was a huge help to the Central Powers. It was a just it was a it was a core member, but just overall it was just kind of lackluster compared to these two. And let me just add one more in here. Britain. Britain was a naval power. It was able to sorry, was able to actually it was Britain basically just ruled the naval front. It was basically just the German Empire versus Britain for the naval front. Just complete they just kept fighting over it. And Britain ended up winning the front, which was just huge. And also they made a lot of innovations like tanks. They made huge innovations on planes, and also so did France. And also a lot of these top tier countries made a lot of advancements in their war, so in how they warred. So next is Romania. It's above Belgium because if they lost, it wouldn't be that much of a problem for the Allies. It would kind of be a bummer, but it wouldn't be like this huge. We opened up a new front and everyone's losing. This especially applies to Bulgaria. I mean, Belgium, so many B nations that I just can't pronounce properly. It's almost like time to go to bed. I'm tired. So anyway, back to Romania. Romania, it was able to hold the stalemate until it just wasn't able to hold the stalemate against the Germans and the Austro-Hungarians. And after that, it completely capitulated. It held more resistance than Belgium, and it lasted, I think the resistance actually lasted a bit shorter than actually I don't know. I think it was like similar times they were able to hold, but just they were able to hold it. They were able to hold the line better, and when they lost, it wasn't such a big thing. So that is my complete tier list. I'm going to actually turn on comments this time. Actually, on my old video, my first video, you can actually open up comments on it. So anyway, goodbye. This has been the Simulated Kingdom. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. It'll really help me out. And bye. The World War I video is coming out in probably the next few weeks. So stay tuned for that.